Welcome to this first module of the unit devoted to the instrumental approach in the project ICME awardees multimedia online resources. In this module, I will tell you how this approach emerged, answering questions from Jorge Gaona, a Chilean Ph.D. student in my research team. I hope that knowing this story will help you understand the raison d'être of this approach. I find also important to tell this story answering questions of a student who discovered the French didactic culture recently. Jorge, what do you want to know exactly?
Hi, Professor Michèle. Thank you very much for this interview. The first question is, I remember in the master program in mathematics education, we have been introduced to the instrumental approach, but I don't know what is the history about this theory. Can you explain me?
This story goes back to the early 90s, when I was asked by the direction of the technology at the Ministry of Education to follow and support the work of a group of mathematics teachers. They were experts in the educational use of technology and had been asked to reflect on the learning potential of computer algebra system, CAS, and also on the curricular changes that their official introduction in high schools would require. During 6 months, I attended their meetings and listened from them. Then, with the support of 3 close colleagues, Mahabou Blanchard, Jean-Baptiste Lagrange, and Jean-Philippe Drouard, I launched a national inquiry on the use of CAS in high schools.
In this research, what was the methodology used?
In this inquiry, we combine 3 methodological tools. Questionnaires for teachers and students. These were distributed over the whole country thanks to the teachers in charge of technological innovation in the different academies, the regional authorities for education in France. Observations of sessions in classes of teachers from the expert group, using tasks selected by them to show the learning potential of CAS. And a review of the international literature on CAS and mathematics education.
What was exactly this gap?
The results of this inquiry were not really those expected. To summarize, the questionnaire showed that even in classes of teachers active in the promotion of CAS, the use of CAS was at most episodic. They also showed that only a small percentage of students perceived CAS as real learning tools. Above all, they showed a serious gap between the expert discourse and what was observed in classroom sessions. The teacher's discourse reflected the ordinary discourse on CAS at that time. For instance, it was claimed that by taking in charge technical tasks such as solving equations, computing derivatives or integrals, CAS allowed students to develop a more strategic and conceptual activity. The task and situation designed by our experts pursued this goal. However, the students' observation gave another picture. These students who used CAS episodically spent a lot of time in managing the communication with the software. They met difficulties at interpreting feedbacks. Most of them preferred to multiply trials, and strangely, often this strategy turned out to be more effective than reflective behavior. We identified different didactic phenomena: pseudo-transparency, phishing, double transposition.
In the master program, I heard about this phenomenon. but you can clarify anyway, for example, the transparency phenomenon?
Yes. To enter an expression in a class, you write a linear expression, which is then displayed in a spatial form, similar to usual mathematics writing. However, there are some subtle semiotic differences that can be a source of perturbation for students. Hence, the name of pseudo-transparency to label this phenomenon. We first observe it in the grade 9 class of one of our expert teachers. He had designed a series of derived tasks. Derived was the name of the software, where he exploited this similarity to work on the structure of algebraic expressions and the use of parentheses. Students were asked to enter this complex algebraic expression in Derive, and they received an immediate perceptive feedback. For this task, indeed, Derive offered thus a priori a powerful didactic milieu, as defined in the theory of situations. In fact, many students were disconcerted by subtle semiotic differences between Derive and paper and pencil writing. For instance, the disappearance of parentheses they had entered, or the differentiated treatment of parentheses and brackets. Let me show you what two students we observed did, using the version of Derive implemented now on the Chilean Ph.D. They entered the third expression, first without parentheses, and they obtained this result. Immediately, they decided to use parentheses, but put them like that, and thus obtained the same result. Then they moved the parentheses again with no effect, as you can see here. Eventually, they called the teacher. Seeing their screen, the teacher commented, "You forgot the parentheses." And the student answered, "The parentheses they had typed disappeared." There was a misunderstanding between teacher and students, characteristic of the pseudo-transparency phenomenon. Indeed, students had difficulties at interpreting feedbacks and benefiting from these, contrary to what was anticipated by the teacher and also by us. However, when aware of this phenomenon, the teacher redesigned the lesson, and these differences became a source of very rich classroom discussion about the distinction between mathematical rules on the one side and writing convention on the other side, rather unusual discussion at grade 9.
So this is the first step, but what is the connection with the instrumental approach?
I come to it. This first study showed us that things were less idyllic than the discourse promoting the use of CAS was claiming. Technical work did not disappear, but was taking other forms, not necessarily productive for learning. The economy of mathematical activity was changing, but not necessarily for the benefit of reflecting and conceptual thinking. We had to dig more into this. Fortunately, the ministry followed us and decided to finance a second project. This new project involved 3 research teams in Paris, Lyon, and Montpellier, and experimental classes equipped with a new TI-92 calculator, thanks to a partnership with Texas Instruments. During the first year of this second project, in 1995, Pierre Rabardel published his book entitled Les hommes et les outils contemporains, People and Technology. The reading of this book was for me a source of enlightenment. Suddenly emerged the hypothesis that an awareness of processes of instrumental genesis could be an important source of the discrepancies observed, and more generally, of the difficulties of technological integration.
I remember in the master program, the instrumental approach was presented how a combination between the Rabelais approach and the anthropological theory of the didactic, but you speak only the first approach. Why?
Yes, you are right. I was also very soon convinced that the professional context evoked by Pierre Rabardel in his book were substantially different from the school context. Hence, the hypothesis that a combination with the anthropological theory of the didactic would allow us to pay the necessary attention to institutional conditions and constraints, and the hope that this combination should allow a qualitative jump in the understanding of class integration when compared to the cognitive frameworks used in class research at the time. For instance, the distinction between the vision of class as a black box or as a white box, or between relational and instrumental understanding. I should add that I was not the only one to be inspired by Rabardel's ideas. This was also the case for my close colleagues Mahabou Blanchard and Jean-Baptiste Lagrange, and for Bat Defoit, a doctorate student of mine beginning his Ph.D., and also for Luc Trouche, who was completing his Ph.D. in Montpellier. In fact, Luc Trouche incorporated Rabardel's ideas in a way slightly different from us, closer to Rabardel's perspective. The reason, I think, is that Trouche's perspective was mainly cognitive, while hers was more systemic and institutional. From a theoretical point of view, he relied on the theory of conceptual field due to Joao Vergniaud, and Rabardel himself was scientifically close to Vergniaud, who had been his doctoral supervisor.
What is the difference between the two approaches?
Oh, it would be too much for this first module, but I will come back to this point in other module, I promise.